I want to talk about podcast. Quisiera hablar de podcast.
Podcast.
Tienes uno muy bueno.
Gracias.
La verdad que sigo desde que encontré el mundo de podcast. Antes de hablar eso, I wanted to share with you my experience when I first started. As you know, this is episode 4, so I just started. I've been working on it for about 4 months, thinking about it, decorating YouTube videos on best microphones, on...
These are really good, by the way.
Thank you. On the software that I use to edit, on getting people. I mean, it's a lot of time, a lot of work, right? So my experience has been one of the best days my entire life, to be honest with you, was when I first had my two guests, Shane and Lizzie. Mm-hmm. Because they showed up. By the way, my first guest, the first person, which I have to share that story later on.
That's funny. That's how I felt the first time I got laid. I was like, she showed up. That was the best day. She showed up. Yeah, no.
Deja tú acá, yo acá bien inspirado y tú, okay, that was good. Pero te estoy diciendo that when they first showed up, because the first guest that I had thought about since day one, it was a real estate agent, era una muchacha con una niña, creo. And I thought her story was really good. I won't tell you the whole story, pero she basically said yes to me and didn't show.
Oh, yeah.
Yo estaba aquí, así como estaba ya listo, esperando acá, like with my questions, extremely nervous. So, bueno, doesn't show up, whatever, right? So then, going back to like that feeling that Shane was here, Lizzie was here, that they were here, and I was able to complete the interview. Everything was good. It was one of the happiest days ever. Like, me fui a mi casa, ya estaba tarde, me llevé una botella de champaña que agarré aquí del... Alguien me regaló, por cierto, disculpen, porque si alguien me regaló una botella hace un año que abrí el salón, no me acuerdo quién, me la llevé, I was texting everyone, hey, oh my God, and they're showing them pictures, and I felt so good. It was, even though it was just the start of the project, of the process, pero yeah, like, I saw something now tangible, right? Mm-hmm. Now, with that said, one of the worst days ever was when I first uploaded that. Why? Because when I uploaded everything, like I do the editing of the video. I mean, I saw all the mistakes I made. I saw how nervous I was. I saw all the words that I invented. Like, I don't know, it was a whole mess, right? And uploading that was the worst, putting it myself out there for the first time. Again, I'm not... too into social media or sharing my life. So when I did that, to me, I was like, ay, Dios mío, here it goes. Boom. And I was just there in my room. Mi niña me estaba viendo like, hey, no, yo nomás like answering to people, thank you, and whatever. And then one of the worst things was some of my friends were sharing the video on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I know that's a good thing, right? Because they're supporting me. But I know I did really bad. Yo, no, ¿por qué enseñas eso? Like, yeah. Thank you, but I don't want to show it to people. That was my experience. And again, since you recently, well, not recently, it's been about 6 months, July of 2020. It's a very successful podcast.
Thank you.
So tell us about your experience. Maybe that, what I just described, maybe it's similar to yours, maybe it's not. If you can talk about that, please.
It actually is. I don't have a lot of video on my YouTube channel of me doing stand-up. There's not a lot, and it's on purpose.
Dime por qué.
When I was a kid, I had a presentation at church, and I decided to record it. And I remember that I thought I had done a really good job on my presentation, and then when I saw it, I hated it. So then I realized that I was only hurting myself by watching it. Why didn't I just stick to the idea that it was good? And so then I got this phobia of recording myself and watching myself. Because one of my friends that's kind of like she's a psychologist, she says, you're a real artist. A real artist is never satisfied with their work. And that's the bottom line is we're so self-critical that we become our own worst enemy. So what I did is I decided, okay, you're never really good at stand-up until about 5 years in. I'm not posting anything. I'm just going to be good. And eventually, when it's on TV, it'll be good. Right? And people will see it, and people will like it, and people will like me, and that's when I know it's good. And that's probably one of the dumbest things I ever did. Because even now, I watch my podcast and I go, ugh. Because we don't like ourselves that way. It's not who we think we are.
Yeah.
We have this image of how cool we are. And we think, this is who I am. And then you watch this person on camera and there's a disconnect between you and you. And you go, that's not me. That's not who I think I am. That's not how I sound. That's not the person. And then you start becoming very critical and judgmental because you're basing it on the person you think you are.
Mm-hmm.
But what you have to realize is that you are that person to everybody else. They see absolutely nothing wrong with it because that's who they know. So you have to get used to the fact that that's you.
Okay.
It took me a while to be able to watch my own podcast and listen to myself talk. Now I know what my voice sounds like outside of my head, but it took me a while, and it does it with comedy too. But I have a lot of videos of me doing stand up. I don't like any of them. I don't even like the one that's on Netflix. I look at it and I go, ugh, and people are like, but it was good, and I'm like, ugh. So it's very normal. It's a very normal thing to feel that way. It's very normal to feel like.
Well, thank you. It definitely helps, and I'm not saying this just for saying it. That the truth is that it makes a lot of sense, and you're absolutely right. You know what? I
listen to all the other guys, and I go, how come I can't be just cool like them? You know, it's like, why do I have to sound like that? You know, why do I? But it's just what you perceive to be you versus what reality is. And you know, I used to do a joke about this, but I stopped doing the joke like 8 years ago. But it's one of my first jokes. I used to talk about how we should have a pill that makes us see ourselves in the mirror the way we really look. I said, because you know we need it. I would say, you know we need it because you see fat guys with their sleeves rolled up, acting like they're all tough, and you're just like, bro, that's not scary. It looks like a leg of ham, you know? You know, and they got tattoos. It's like, that's a USDA stamp. What are you talking about? You know, it's like, because our self-perception, our mind tricks us. When we look in the mirror, the mind tricks us to look at ourselves in a way that what we think we look like, that's what we see in the mirror. But that's not what we really look like, especially if you're overweight like me. I've never felt fat in my life until I look at pictures and go, who the hell is that fat guy? But in the mirror, I can't see it. I can see it once I lose weight and I start gaining weight, then you can kind of have a reference. You're like, your mind has a disconnect, but your mind is designed to protect you. So it protects your self-image. So when you look at yourself in the mirror, you don't necessarily see what you really look like. That's a weird concept. So when you see the podcast, there's a disconnect there. Your mind's not telling you that's me. It's telling you I'm watching a show, and then you're going, who's that guy?
Yeah.
I don't recognize that guy. Because your mind won't let you recognize that guy.
Yeah, el Mike, yo sí me reconocí y dije, no, es ese mismo tonto que todos los días. Well, Sam, thank you for sharing. What is, for anyone thinking of starting a podcast, maybe they already have a podcast, what are some things that you have learned so far? Just to give us a little bit of context, again, we said July. Mm-hmm. You started from 10 subscribers. You're now at 10,000 subscribers, more or less.
10,700.
Okay, no one's counting.
Yeah, I am.
Oye, deja tú.
Yeah, no, it's
and
like,
I'm at 35.
No.
Deja tú, no,
No, but this is what it takes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
You can't get subscribers if you don't have any content.
And like I was telling you even before starting this, the reason I started this podcast, it's sitting right there.
No, I appreciate
that's
that.
That's it.
And that's how the reason I started doing stand-up was to make people laugh. There was no real like ambition as far as where I'm going to take this. And as long as I get to make people laugh, I'm good with it. And all of this stuff kind of fell on my lap to a certain degree, although I didn't give up and go, well, I'm never going to be. No, I was like, I'm going to hustle. And so hustle as much as you can in what you love doing, but do it because you love it, and it'll be great for you to do.
Yeah.
And it's a great podcast. You have a great little studio, great setup. I mean, it's really nice, dude. And I mean, the microphones, everything is good. I mean, the audio is good.
Are you enjoying the conversation as well?
Oh, yeah. The conversation is great. And it's one of those things that, of course, I'm talking about my favorite subject.
Nice. Which is okay.
Which is me. No, comedy.
No, I mean, again, Sam, thank you. But again, this is the main reason, and I know I've been saying it on every single episode, but the truth is, this is my why. to hang around with people like you that not only reinforces the message but gives me other things to think about. And again, my influence circle expanding that, like, oh my God, I'm so, again, guys, we've been here for, it's gonna be close to 2 hours, but right before starting, we were another hour just talking.
And I'm gonna tell you something else. Okay, this might be the first step into something different. You know, you might have started this podcast just to meet people like me, or to get to know different people that are doing stuff in El Paso. You never know. This might be the initial step to then having a totally different concept along the same lines. But it's exactly like a late night that we tried so hard to make that successful, and then one day, boom, they launched a podcast, and it grew so fast, so phenomenal, their growth in that podcast, that they had to come back and go, guys, we're not doing a late night anymore.
Yeah. And the thing is that it's not an overnight success. That late night had to happen in order for them to be successful.
Exactly. So this podcast, it could be your first step to having a successful podcast, like a way more successful podcast. This one might be successful, or this might be what leads into a more successful podcast. And at that time, 5-6 years from now, I remember that guy invited me to his podcast, and we've been friends ever since. And now I'm on his way more successful podcast. I'm glad I was nice to him, you know, and you just never know. And it's vice versa.
Yeah, definitely.
Because my podcast is doing good right now. And I'm going to keep pushing that podcast, and people enjoy the podcast, and I love my fans. Thank you guys for me, toda la gente que me sigue en el podcast, muchas gracias.
Ahora sí hablas español, se llama.
Sí, no, es que la mayoría habla español. Mi grupo de Facebook se llama Los Cagadienses.
Ah, ok.
Sí, y pues los quiero mucho a todos. Siempre les pongo, los quiero mucho, Cagadienses, porque sí los quiero, o sea, es chingón que la gente me siga, y lo aprecio. Es algo que me hace sentir orgulloso de lo que estoy haciendo, pero me hace sentir querido hasta cierto punto. Es bien raro, porque pues como platicamos, uno es muy criticón de uno mismo. Entonces cuando la gente te dice, me gustó mucho, gracias, pues es lo máximo. Pero pues tal vez eso no va a ser el final, ese es un principio.
Tú nunca sabes, sobre todo la gente que conoces, a lo mejor vas... No, o sea, la verdad he disfrutado mucho esta plática.
Gracias.
Sí quiero acabar esa